Welcome to My Big Safety Challenge, a podcast all about stories of safety leadership, presented by Dale Carnegie and the Board of Certified Safety Professionals.
Jay, special day today. This is season and session 4 of the podcast, the first international guest that we've ever had. And you know her well. Please introduce and let us get to know her also.
Thank you, Merle. I am thrilled to introduce Becky Hickman, the Chief Executive Officer for the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents, RoSPA, one of the UK's oldest organizations for safety, and just a wonderful, wonderful organization to work with, be a part of, and interact with. So, Becky, we are thrilled to have you with us today, and more as a person than as a CEO is how I look at your presence here on the podcast, because of you know how I feel about you and how others feel about you. So welcome.
Thank you so much, both of you. Genuinely an honour. First international guest, no less. Well, I will take that and run with it. Thank you so much. I was thrilled when the opportunity first arose, and having since found out a bit more about the podcast, even more delighted to be here and be a part of these, really interesting conversations that you guys are creating and sharing, which of course is what it's all about, isn't it?
It is. So we would like to know a little bit about you, and then tell us about your organization, because probably many of our listeners are not aware of it.
Absolutely. So I am the relatively new Chief Executive of RoSPA. So it stands for the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents. So like Jay said, we are a UK-based organisation. We are one of the oldest safety organisations and the only one that has a royal patronage. And in fact, that's something that we've had the privilege of having for over 100 years, most recently with His Majesty King Charles. We are a charity, first and foremost. Yes, we were born in London, in the capital of the UK, but we're increasingly global. We have an award scheme that's in over 60 different countries that reaches 7 million different employees. So we have quite a big international footprint. But I think the main thing that listeners might find interesting is that, yes, we do an awful lot of work in the world of occupational safety and health, but RoSPA spans accidents in all areas of your lives. So on your journeys to and from work, whether you're travelling on road or on bike or as a pedestrian, in your lives outside of work, maybe the exciting and even tedious things you get up to the weekend. We're there for you while you're in your home as well. So we really have got a really broad accident prevention mission in the round. So at work, but everywhere else as well.
I'm just curious, Becky, are you influencing safety leaders who are influencers, or are you influencing the general population, or how does your organization influence others?
Really interesting question, Mel. Largely the former. So largely, if you think about it, we are a small organisation, and by that I mean we've got about, just shy of 90 full-time equivalent employees. So we're a small organisation, but we have a massive mission, a massive remit, and a significant global reach. So if you are a charity and you exist to, in our case, prevent accidents, how do you really do that? Well, you do that by doing the things that you think you can uniquely do, which is convening leaders, which is setting standards, which is influencing, which is driving debate. And you do it with people who are basically official or unofficial ambassadors. So people like Jay would be a perfect example. So somebody in the safety community who's really got the bit between his teeth, who's really passionate about, yes, he's an occupational safety and health professional in his paid for role, but actually he's a safety advocate 24/7, all day, every day. And you know that's true, Jay. So we are there to work with people like that who can really, live our ideals and, share some of our advice, our expertise, really kind of get on board with what we're trying to do and drive those safety improvements inside work, outside of work, the full range, basically.
So I'm just curious. Many people are always interested how someone got involved in the safety role, like you. I mean, as a child, did you look forward to, when people ask you, what do you want to be when you get big? Is that what you wanted to attain?
I have to be honest, I suspect it probably wasn't. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? There's a poem I know by a British poet, and in it references, the decisions we made that we don't remember making. And I think so much of life is like that. Like, surely for most of us, there wasn't a conscious moment, right, this is what I'm going to do. But it is funny how these things work out, isn't it? I mean, for me, I've been at RoSPA for 20 years now, so I said earlier that I'm, relatively new chief executive. I am, but I perhaps should have mentioned I wasn't coming to the role entirely cold, having had the previous 19 and a half years to warm up to it. So I have been at RoSPA for a significant proportion of my working life, but prior to that, I was also at an organisation that worked for health and safety. That was a commercial organisation as opposed to a charity, and that was looking just at workplace health and safety. But for me, the thing was, it's about people, isn't it? It's, I think that we're going to spend a significant chunk of our time at work. And how fantastic to find somewhere where you actually believe in what you're doing, whether you work in the third sector or otherwise, whether you believe that you're making a difference. And I genuinely think that if you work in safety, in any of the whole raft of roles that encompasses in all sorts of walks of safety, but fundamentally, your job is about saving lives. Your job is about people. And I think once you get that, it's something that you can really engage with, can't you? And you can really always find more fuel in your tank to want to kind of go further on that journey. So I think, yeah, you can't work at RoSPA and use phrases like happy accident, but it feels like actually it was a fortuitous twist of circumstance, shall we say. But it's worked well for me, and I've certainly, never felt that I haven't got more to give and that I'm not part of a community that is consistently digging deeper and giving more. And that's a kind of great space to be from a work perspective, isn't it?
Yes. Now, Jay, you have seen people that got weary, though, through the years of working with people, working with safety and all. I think it'd be great if you'd talk to us some about, and talk to our safety professionals that are listening, Becky, and just remind us some about the view of people. It's easy to forget why we're really doing these things. Could you talk to us some about that?
It doesn't surprise me at all, Mel, that you've come across safety professionals or people at other stages in their careers who are feeling that attrition, who are feeling that sense of, can I honestly keep plugging away at this seemingly insurmountable challenge? I think that the jobs that people in this community do are underrepresented in terms of actually the difference that they make. I don't think we claim our saving lives status big enough or bold enough. I don't think we think of ourselves necessarily in that way. And I think within workplaces, quite often the health and safety team isn't from a board level down recognised in that way. And that's a real shame, because there should be so much pride in what this profession does. But because there isn't always, and because fundamentally you are dealing with very difficult situations, you are right on the forefront of big decisions that you literally have to stand by. You can completely understand why people do feel that this can ebb away from them and it can take more than perhaps they gain from it. And I feel really fortunate that one of the things that RoSPA is able to do is to reignite that sense of purpose and that sense of pride in the OSH professional community. And as I said, there's probably two key ways that we do that, and Jay will have his own thoughts on these, but one of them I would definitely say is the very fact of the RoSPA Health and Safety Awards scheme, which has been going for over 60 years, which, as I say, is, in over 60 different countries. And that is, for so many people that I speak to who work in the profession, that is one of, if not the only time that they get to be on their board's radar for positive reasons as opposed to negative reasons. Because so often, if this is what you do for your profession, you are, held up if something's happened negatively, but when it's the result of pure hard work, day in, day out tenacity and determination and every, this ongoing insistence that the little things matters because they build up to the big things, that doesn't always get a shout out. Whereas what something like the awards scheme does is bring people together, look back over the last year and give them that opportunity to have that moment in the sun, get them up on the stage, get them there with their teams, get them being a part of a community that doesn't rest on its laurels. propels, that pushes forward. So that, I think, is something that can really help people when they are feeling that they're perhaps, giving a lot and not getting a huge amount back. And on a similar vein, the other part of it, which again Jay will know some about as well, is that sometimes if you're just talking to people about their lives inside work, it can feel like your messages are perhaps getting a little bit well worn, that they're not really refreshed. You feel like it's perhaps plateauing. If you think of something as perennial as slips, trips and falls in the workplace, sometimes people can feel, do you know what, I kind of feel we keep having the same conversation, but we're not really kicking on, we're not really making a difference. And sometimes then one of the catalysts that can really ignite the next seismic shift is when progressive leaders in the safety community start to also think about people in their lives outside of work, because then you're talking to them as whole people. Then you're talking to them as children, as parents, as caregivers, as partners. Then you're recognizing their world and they feel seen and feel valued. And actually that can flip right back into their lives inside of work as much as outside of work. So I can definitely relate to where you're coming from, Merle. It's definitely something that I experience when I speak to leaders in the community. But equally, I do think that as an organisation, RoSPA is privileged to be able to potentially provide some solutions to what is frankly a complicated, nuanced situation, isn't it?
Now, Becky, I'm about to turn this back over to Jay to explore some of that even more. But as you know, I work with Dale Carnegie and we teach a lot for the BCSP people and teach safety professionals about these people principles. There are a couple of Dale Carnegie principles that you were really ringing true with. First of all, the principle that says, give honest, sincere appreciation. Most people who are in the trenches and working hard, like you've said, they do it for the well-being of the people, but there's something of all of us that longs to be known that we've been recognized and that the work we're doing is appreciated. And then another principle is to become genuinely interested in other people and in who they are, and talk in terms of their interest. And when we're talking, what you mentioned about safety, it's not just for these 8 to 10 hours that we're in this place. We're interested in their well-being, who they are as individuals, what their interests are. And there's something about that that really opens up people then to the message that we have. Jay, how else would you like to dig in on those ideas?
Well, certainly the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents is that organization that makes you want to be a part of something bigger. That's been my experience. If I take you back in the conversation, maybe 5 minutes to just explore a little bit the feeling of attending their award events in London, or my first experience was with Becky in Scotland in 2019 now. And that feeling of recognition, positivity, reward is an unbelievable experience for a safety professional who is grinding passionately to make an impact on their organization, just relentless hard work day in and day out. And I would challenge anyone listening to this podcast, really, really explore what RoSPA does and try and be a part of that awards setup they have.
Well, I was not familiar with their organization before we did a pre-interview with you. And I'm fascinated. What encouragement could you give to the safety professionals that are listening right now that whether they can ever get into your organization and be evaluated, what encouragement would you give them as they're working with their employees and their staff? Because I believe that what you're talking about here could be very transferable to other people in other ways. How could the spirit of what you all are doing, how do you see other people putting that into practice in their factories and their workplaces? How could they put that into use?
Yeah, it is. It's about being a part of something, isn't it? So rather than feeling that you alone are dealing with, this never-ending cycles of issues, it's like whack-a-mole sometimes, isn't it? Solve one problem, another one pops up. Solve one problem, another one pops up, and it's relentless. And it can take its toll, as we were talking earlier about people that sometimes do feel worn down. But there are these communities there that if you can lean into them, primarily the RoSPA Award scheme. So Jay's mentioned, the likes of L'Oreal and some of the kind of global entrants who love the scheme and have really run with it, and with organisations use it for their supply chains and what have you. But at its heart, at its core, this was an award scheme for small SMEs. So this is not something that is for the big boys. This is not something that is unattainable. There's a whole raft of different award levels, bronze, silver, gold, etc. But there's one pinnacle award, which is called the Sir George Earle Trophy Award. And only a couple of years ago, it was won by a housing association so basically they provide social housing. They probably employ a few hundred people, if that. They're not a name you would ever have heard of, even if you reside in the same country they're from, but they, above everybody, were held up as being the example. So I would say it's open, it's democratic, it's achievable. And I just think there's so much kind of internal benefit that it helps you think about what you're doing, get the value from the things that you're already doing. And it helps this whole motivation piece as well. And just this kind of just this putting yourself on the map and putting that belief into what you do.
And Jay, when I hear her speak, I'm thinking of another principle of Carnegie where he said, praise the slightest improvement, praise every improvement, be hearty in your approbation, be generous in your praise, lavish in your praise. And there is something about people that respond to genuine, sincere appreciation for the big achievements, but even for steps forward. And Becky, you all are really modeling that to people. And human beings value that. That's what he said in How to Win Friends. He said, everybody longs to feel like they're important and they're valued. What's your thought, Jay?
Everything about Becky's leadership and the team at RoSPA resonates in that same way. Anyone you're going to interact with that organization is going to lift you up. There's an old saying, we rise by lifting others. That is 100% what this iconic organization does.
Can a location duplicate that, replicate that as they work with the people of an organization? How would you encourage safety professionals that are listening to this? How would you encourage them to replicate that in their particular organization?
I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but certainly, in the UK, we talk about there being a shortage of, the right people for the right roles. Obviously, we've got an aging population. We increasingly need to value the workers that we've got. And equally, there is a line of thinking that younger generations are looking for something different in their work life, that they, for them, it's not about just turning up and taking a salary and going home. People are looking for good work that is good for them. They are looking to contribute to something. And I do feel that within the safety community, we're really fortunate in that regard, because actually, if people are looking for a career and looking to want to be a part of a team that has genuine purpose and has genuine meaning, whilst also having, a clear, defined career path and, real responsibilities and what have you, I don't think you can go far wrong. Genuinely, it would seem to me like the place to want to hang your hat, and the place to want to kind of channel your energies. And I think as kind of leaders of safety teams, if we can feel confident in what it is that we're able to provide for those within our teams in terms of a job that really does mean something, a job that is more than just a job that, they can have real pride in. When you look at kind of models of motivation and fundamentally for the successful running of any organisation, you have to find a way for your workforce to feel motivated about what you're trying to achieve. And the commonality for all the models will always be that if you have this shared sense of purpose, something that your workers can really believe in, and it implies just as much for the private sector as it does for the charitable sector. But if people can really believe in the value of what they're doing at work, that's the key, isn't it? That's when it's a game changer from a motivation perspective, and it stops being a 9 to 5 and a turn up, clock in, do what I need to do, go home, and it becomes something much bigger than that. And I feel that on a personal basis, I benefit hugely from work, and I massively believe that exactly that, it is a cliche, but good work is good for people. And I think that it's benefited me enormously in my life, but I think within the whole of the EHS, the OSH community, within the whole of our kind of work world, we have got that opportunity for people to feel that.
And there again, another principle, Carnegie said, appeal to the nobler motives. So it's not just the work we do, it's a higher level of helping people, affecting their lives, affecting their children, helping them, interacting with their neighbors. What else are you thinking, Jay?
Well, I'm thinking the flip side in our pre-production call, and I learned a lot when Becky described the impact of accidents to people. And I don't know if you remember what you said, Becky, but I was scribbling notes so I could take it for myself and present it as my own. But now that we're on a podcast, I can't. I have to give you all the credit for it.
Busted, buddy.
Yeah, but do you recall what you said about accidents, how dehumanizing they are, and the stress of accidents and what it means to be hurt at work? You want to
talk to us some about that?
Yeah, I think we were talking, weren't we, Jay, about exactly that, about kind of what motivates us and what drives us. And I was just saying that as somebody who, over the course of these 20 plus years at RoSPA, and then, prior work before then, has worked with families who've been directly impacted, and, has kind of had to come to this understanding. I'm just so acutely aware that the word accident sounds innocuous, but if you actually think through what we're talking about, by its very definition, an accident tends to be something sudden. It's something that was unexpected. So all those awful, post-event realizations that it was the last time, I didn't get to say goodbye. There's no planning for these things. So I think the fact it's sudden is horrific. Also, when you think of accidents, the very nature of an accident and how it manifests, whether it's a road traffic collision, whether it's a fall from height, it's incredibly, shocking, isn't it? It's the actual impact of that is just immediate and ultimately so traumatic. I also think the other thing about accidents that makes them just so heart-wrenching is that they do statistically disproportionately affect our most vulnerable community members. So our younger children, our under fives, our older family members, our less economically advantaged communities, all of those more vulnerable groups are disproportionately more likely to die as a result of an accident for a whole host of kind of complex and interconnected factors. But I think when you look at all that context, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about things that can, in an instant, change not just one life, but the reverberations that go down through generations. Because the final thing I'll say about accidents that I personally think is the ultimate cruelty is the very fact that, unlike other awful things that can happen to people, when it's an accident, the fact is it did not have to happen. And I think, again, once you just cognitively process that a bit and think what that means. So, if it is a fatality, of course, not all accidents are fatalities, but say if it is a fatality, the fact that there was a cause of that accident and the accident did not have to happen, doesn't that just make it so hard to live with? Doesn't that just make accepting it almost impossible? And I just think if you just spend a bit of time actually thinking that through, because I don't know if you have quite the same thing in the States, and it's not as bad in the UK as it used to be, but there was for a period of time some sort of derision about the health and safety community, and health and safety was considered a bit of a scapegoat for why things couldn't happen, and characterised as the hard hat brigade who were stopping people doing things that actually there's no reason why they shouldn't go on and do them. And I have always felt, frankly, quite angry about that easy, lazy stereotyping that absolutely fails to grapple with the reality of what we're talking about when we're talking about sudden traumatic death, life-changing injuries, permanent disabilities that had a cause that did not need to happen. I just think if you can't think about that and get from that your kind of motivation to want to do what you can to be a part of the solutions, then, I don't know.
Now, Becky, I'll tell something quick, and then as I'm doing that, I'm kind of curious if there's a particular story that stands out to you that really enlightened you on that, or when you think about it, it drives you. But on a personal note, 43 years ago today, my wife and two of her sisters and her mother and her father were involved in a head-on accident where her father was taken suddenly and killed by a young man that didn't mean bad, but he went around a curve on a hill and hit him head on. And we were just having that conversation yesterday of how that one moment 43 years ago impacted lives forever. And did you have anything like that you've seen, a story that really resonated with you of the effect that an accident has on people, their families, other individuals?
Yeah, I think one for me, and it's, you always feel that it's not your story to tell, don't you, in a way? I don't know if you feel that sometimes. It's not my story to tell, but one that I have never forgotten about is a friend of mine went to university with a friend of hers who subsequently did what lots of students in the UK do, which is move to a house share in London, good job opportunities, you live with lots of other young people. And basically she came home from work one day, had a headache, so ran herself a bath and died in the bathtub. And it turned out it's because there was carbon monoxide poisoning in the shared house that she was renting from a faulty boiler that hadn't been serviced. And to me, that's one of those ones that it almost gets worse every year. She was engaged to be married at the time that this happened. So you've then got her fiance who, should have been starting married life, not going down that route. I think of her parents quite regularly because this is someone who's the same age as me, and I think of what have I done since those early years, gone on, got married, had children. You think what's been taken from them, and it's generational, isn't it? It's the siblings, it's her then fiance, it's her parents, it's any future that she was promised is taken away. These are things that can and should have been done. And equally looking at it the other way for the I don't know anything about the case in detail, but the legalities of who owned the house and what should and shouldn't have happened. You think there, because where there is blame here, there is that again. And that's long-term life-changing impact as well, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, I can talk to you big picture wise about globally the statistics and globally how many people die as a result of accidents every year. And that's all very meaningful and actually probably quite shocking for your listeners. But equally, sometimes, just as you've done, Mel, I don't think any of us would struggle actually to think just in our local lives and our local communities of these reverberations of absolute tragedy and what that means on that sort of level.
And that's the great opportunity that safety professionals have to bring that as a reminder to people who get busy in life, Jay, who at times kind of get stuck in the grind, the routine, as we've said. And there was another statement that she said about accidents, and that I don't know that we've actually said that now, that you had written down that you said was really a game changer for you of how to perceive them as a tragedy that shouldn't happen.
Just the fact that probably I haven't sat down and looked. I look at all kinds of linguistics and words, as you know, hanging out with me today. I talk about care like that's an incredible word that needs to be used in safety all the time. And you're seeing it in a lot of companies these days. But after 30 years, I haven't really sat back and thought, what does an accident really mean? It means it was really superficial for me in my career. It means somebody got hurt and I didn't do my job to prevent it. But I never sat down. I knew it was bad. I always knew it was bad. It would impact people at this high level. But then to sit and listen to Becky a couple of weeks ago describe it, just like you did now, it's sudden, it's dehumanizing. There's no social justice to it. It's stressful. And we went down, it was probably 5 minutes of listening to you describe what an accident actually feels from a humanistic perspective. It's clear all you think about with safety is people, Becky. That comes across very clearly, and the impact on people, which is probably why the organization you're in is such a perfect match with you. But just to sit back and describe not even what happened, but just the event itself is something that was very eye-opening for me that we should probably spend more time thinking about, but not just us. I think Becky, to her original point or question, what's going on in the United States, we have a lot of that, Becky, where, safety is a safety person's job. They're responsible. You're the safety police. But really, we are just a catalyst to try and get more people involved these days. And the premier organizations, and you probably see this, maybe you can speak to it a little bit more in depth, are when you see these companies coming to visit you and working with you at RoSPA, what are some common traits and characteristics that you see from them that makes them the best at what they do?
The thing that I see time and time again is there tends to be one particularly charismatic leader who recognizes that they have the opportunity to do something more than just go through the rote expectations of what the role would require. So often, we find people who, as I say, they are clearly ambassadors for what they do in all walks of their life. So if you're part of their team, you would feel every day that they believe in what you do and that all these small parts contribute to something bigger. And you would feel that you should rightly go in there and hold your head up high and recognise that you're not always going to be, popular. You're not always going to be, recognised more widely. But within your team, within what you're doing, you would have that sense of being a part of something bigger. And we do see that time and time again, just these really kind of engaged individuals. And they tend to want to lean in and be a part of things, and they'll volunteer with us to mentor other organizations who perhaps at a different stage in their evolution. They'll want to perhaps be ambassadors for us and help open up their networks, so we have opportunities like this to go along and sort of talk about some of the things that we can do and have done and be a part of things. And so often, one of the definite things that I find is that, wow, okay, how great that actually you can often find, so you're probably the person that's created this environment where your team feel listened to, they feel valued, they feel confident to go out and make these things happen and have these conversations.
So let me double down on that, Becky. Are you saying that charismatic leadership is a fundamental injury prevention technique for the companies that you are working with?
If not charismatic, then certainly authentic and genuine. Like what I'm talking about, Jay, is people that don't just give it lip service. I don't need them to be standing on a stage and clapping and I don't need that. That's not relevant. They're not running a cult, but I think it makes a difference when they genuinely believe in it themselves. Like you can do safety as a tick box exercise. You can consider your legal duties. You can go through and think, tick, I am compliant. Tick, I have, done that. You can choose to treat it like that, and lots of organisations do. And in the eyes of the law, they are, operating as they should do. However, what I'm saying is that where you have people in positions of authority who genuinely believe in the value to their organization's performance and to their individual's performance in a holistic sense, I say that's a game changer. Yes, for sure. Yeah, but it's got to be authentic.
And it's this idea, and we teach this in Dale Carnegie at times, that we want to have certain results. But to have those results, you have to do certain things. But to do certain things, Becky, you have to be. And it starts on the inside, that authenticity. If you be, you'll do. And if you do, you'll have. But it starts with being who you are. And that authenticity, that realness that people you talk to, they say, they're not just saying this stuff. This safety person leads it. Even if they don't have a title, they believe it. How valuable has that to our work that we do, Becky? You have,
it really is, isn't it?
It is. All right, I just want to, when I first met you on here, and haven't met you face to face yet, but I said, this woman is genuine. She has enthusiasm. Could you talk to us of how you contribute that in your life to what you do and how valuable that is enthusiasm?
I think that one of the ways that I'm very fortunate is that, I kind of have I've got obviously internal responsibilities, but I've also got a very externally facing role. So I regularly meet people who are genuinely inspiring. And I think it's a privilege to represent an organisation like RoSPA. I consider my kind of tenure is, really what you want if you have the honour to lead an organisation with a heritage and pedigree and a mission such as our own, is you want to be able to do the very best that you can with that so that it'll be even better for future generations. So that in itself is a motivator. That is something that makes me want to kind of, get up and crack on and drive things forward, because I believe that we've got just so much potential. And I believe that we've got such an important, enormous mission that if I ever felt like I should take my foot off the gas, then I shouldn't be doing the job anymore, because there's always further to go. And then I feel like it is so compounded by the other interactions that you have, and the ways in which you see leaders are able to change things within their workforces. So, for example, one that comes to mind is an organisation called TriStar, who are based in the Gulf region, and their chief executive is somebody called Eugene Main. He's basically built a very successful transport organisation from scratch, really successful now, but safety runs through that organisation like nothing else. And I was at an event where he was speaking on the stage, addressing a sort of mixed crowd, and you can tell, can't you, the energy that's created in presentations like that. You just get a feel for it in the audience, don't you? And I was chatting to some of his colleagues, some of his workforce afterwards, and to a person, they all talked about how fortunate they feel to work at an organisation where that's your leadership. Where that mindset is what's, it's not about your shareholders. It's not about, it's safety first and foremost, and everything was subordinate to that. And that's quite game changing, isn't it? But just to see that direct correlation between that leader, that, visible leader who is the embodiment of safety, and then how that you can see cascades down to create that culture within that organisation.
And I believe I told you this statement that Dale Carnegie said. I sent it to you. That he said the little known secret of success in an organization or for people is enthusiasm. And some people say, well, I'm just not really enthusiastic. He said, act enthusiastic and you'll become enthusiastic, and it grows. And how much do people within our workforces long to see us as leaders who just don't have a title, but from our soul and our being? Jay, it's that enthusiasm. How vital is that?
It's vital. It is vital in our business for sure. Enthusiasm and passion, heart is very important in what we do. Like as what Becky just described, if you had asked that chief executive officer of that company if safety is indeed a differentiator for the company and everything they do, does it add value to performance, to their end of the year numbers, to their, if they're public, to their shareholders? I bet you would say yes, Becky, right? He thinks it's a key business differentiator.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because it's protecting his people, number one, it's adding value to the business, and two, it's a financial performance indicator. The Harvard Business Review had an article this week about how safety will benefit your business, and it was really an iconic article that I would challenge everybody to read. It was on LinkedIn. It's been all over the papers here. If you're into research and you're into understanding the value proposition of safety, it's going to make you money. But you're not here to make money on safety. You're here to protect your people. But by protecting your people, you're going to make money for your business. Like, how can you argue with that logic? Oh, everybody goes home the same way they came to work. Oh, it makes the company more profitable. Oh, great. This is fantastic.
And that's the beauty, Becky, that we've seen you portray to us and give us an example for here, is that the enthusiasm has to start with us. It's contagious and it's caught by other people. But if our safety professionals that are listening are waiting for everybody else to light the fire, it could be dim for a long time.
It could be. Becky, let me ask you, we're getting close on time here, and I really want to honor your time. But what advice would you give to Jay as a 22-year-old safety professional coming into the world versus Jay as a much older man 30 years later working for safety after a 30-year career? What would you say to the young Jay coming in and the Jay that you see before you now from a career perspective? What advice would you give an EHS professional at the start and more towards the more mature end of their career? Mature, I said.
Now, I don't feel wildly qualified to advise either young Jay, who I imagine was a bit of a character, or his more mature counterpart. But
and he's still
I'll
a
give it
character
stab.
too, but that's okay. That's a whole different.
Absolutely. I think for somebody young starting out, I can only speak from my own perspective, and I remember finding those initial years quite hard, in so much as that, you're following a sort of trajectory, aren't you? If you're fortunate, you've perhaps gone to university and you very much put one foot in front of the other and continue to follow a straight road. And then when you come to the end of that road, it can be quite hard to know where to go and to feel that you found your purpose. I think that I'm by far not alone in always sort of thinking that I probably would find a job that I felt had some social value. My mum and dad are both teachers, for example, and I've always grown up in an environment where it's expected that you work hard, and it's expected that you work hard at something that you feel has value. It's irrelevant what price tag the wider world attaches to that in the form of your paycheck, but you feel that what you do has value. And I think for people like young 20-year-old Jay, it can be hard because you do want to find that in your life, because you probably already realise that things can feel quite hollow and empty if you're not able to find a sense of genuine purpose for yourself. And what I would say is that I genuinely do think that a career in safety gives people that. As I said earlier, we don't shout about, because the trouble is that you don't see the lives you saved. That's by definition, isn't it? You don't know what didn't happen because of the interventions you low-key, quietly, behind the scenes put in place. So you perhaps don't see it, but if you are, at that early crossroads in your career and you're looking for a way ahead, I would say if you want purpose and a sense of real value, then, you can't go far wrong. And then to older Jay, I've witnessed current Jay in action.
Easy, Becky.
And one of the great abilities you have is to, because of that authenticity, because of that genuine belief in what you do, and because of that real lived experience, you can bring people with you. So, it's not that long since you joined Xylem, and I've met some of your team members there, and from their perspective, you were their new boss, and actually, who were you? And what legitimacy did you have to go in and kind of change their work world? And I mean, no disrespect, but that's a very natural way to respond to having a new boss. And what I've, seen from my sort of sideline vantage point is how you have created a cohesive team who are pretty prepared to follow you wherever you would take them, Jay, frankly, aren't they? Because you've listened, because you've done it genuinely, because you've got that experience that you've brought to bear. And that's the value, isn't it, of all the things that you've done, culminating now to be in these positions where you were able to use your power to that great effect. And it's just a really, really great thing to witness. And I imagine for you, Jay, a great thing to be a part of. And I know that your team, are very engaged and are very keen to continue to go on with their journey and their progression. So yeah, it's a fantastic thing to witness.
That was very kind words. Thank you, Becky. Moving.
And Becky, I would encourage all of our folks. Some people are seeing the video, other people are just hearing the verbal words, but I would encourage everybody to go to that website, RoSPA.com, and just look at it and explore it and gain some ideas from it, even consider doing the process of it. And as I'm looking here at the tagline of your organization, it says, accidents don't have to happen. And what a great reminder that is, and a great message that we can give to our people as we're working with them. And from our heart, thank you very much for taking your time to help influence the many people that will listen in. You're an influencer with enthusiasm from your heart and your soul. And Becky, thank you very much for sharing your time with us today.
Thank you both so much. I've really, really enjoyed it. And thank you to your listeners as well for taking their time. Thank you.
Jay, you helped make a great connection there to help introduce us to Becky. There's so many nuggets, but something that stood out to me was we talked about statistics and the stories behind what happens. And behind every number, there's lives and there's stories of people that are affected. And she helped bring that to life. What's something that stood out to you about this time?
Becky's energy, enthusiasm, and passion for people clearly come across in everything she's doing. The way she articulates at the basic level of what safety and accidents are and how they impact people and what her role is to prevent them in the future. It was just it's amazing to listen to her describe those aspects.
Yeah, so for as folks have listened, it's things that can make game changers for all of us. Great stuff.
Fantastic, I agree.
Thanks for listening to My Big Safety Challenge, a podcast produced in partnership by Dale Carnegie and BCSP, with your hosts, Dale Carnegie Master Trainer Merle Heckman and Jay Harf, Vice President of Global Environment, Health, Safety, and Sustainability at Xylem. Executive produced by Charlie Eltringham. The supervising producer is Joel Burgai. Directed by Jiachi Liu. Edited by Jared Griot and Kyla Anderson. Editorial support from Brandon Moha. Social media support from Braylon Morgan and Evelyn Baco. Consulting producers are Colin Brown and Mark Sullivan. To have new episodes delivered directly to you, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever fine podcasts are downloaded. If you would like to share your story of a safety leadership challenge you faced, email us at info@mybigsafetychallenge.com. See you next time.